Okay, wow, look at that. You are screen sharing. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to LABMP 590, Technology and the Future of Medicine. And this first presentation is the introduction, and it's about the accessible future, which means a future that is easy to understand. You can find lots of people talking about the future where it appears that you have to read 17 books before you can even begin to understand the future. So we're trying to present to you a future that is more readily understandable than that, and then make predictions from that and try to see we can gently massage the future in a direction that will be positive for the human race, right? So that's one reason for taking this course, is maybe you'll help turn things toward a better end for humanity, better direction. Okay, so the quiz that some of you have filled out and others can fill out later, the idea of this is to give you a taste of the midterm, and also so that I know if I have anything to teach you or if you already know everything, which would be kind of depressing for me if I'm trying to add new knowledge and all my new knowledge is stuff that you already know. So yeah, anyway, so if you haven't already sent me the quiz, please fill it out and send it to me today. So as I pointed out, we are contemplating the idea of doing the midterm as a take-home exam over a weekend, which would probably make it a better educational experience. I mean, there are two ways to look at exams, right? If they're supposed to make the students really nervous and put them through a very unpleasant experience, that's one thing. But assuming that that's not the aim, then it would be good to have you kind of be able to deliberate over the midterm rather than feeling rushed and so on. And what I feel about that, even if we do it that way and you get 4 days, you can still leave questions blank. If you honestly don't know anything about it, it doesn't seem worthwhile for you to begin to generate an answer, then there's nothing wrong with leaving questions blank if you have 4 days to fill out an exam, just like you would if you had, 80 minutes. So anyway, that's up to you. Okay, the objectives for this lecture: to outline the basic plan of the course, its expectations, due dates, evaluation criteria, feedback mechanisms, and new features. To begin to introduce basic concepts of the course, including technological singularity, exponential change, existential risk, and the accessible future. To outline plans for Longevity Day, November 1st. You probably already know that longevity seems to be a less popular subject in Canada than just about any other country. Every other country has all sorts of longevity organizations. Canada doesn't. So if you guys choose not to have us do anything special for Longevity Day, that would be okay. On the other hand, if one of you or more of you want to start Canada's first longevity organization, that opportunity is there. Okay, outline the expectations for midterm exam, which we're now thinking would be on 19th, which would be on material up to November 3rd. Mentor and topic selection. So you have to tell me what you're going to do your final paper and presentation on by October 29th. And the idea of a mentor, you can pick anybody who's ever taught in the course, and they can be somebody younger than you, because we have a lot of young people teaching, and ask them for like basic advice. How do you pick a topic that is manageable within a 10-page paper and a 20-minute presentation and so on. You don't have to have a mentor, or I can by default be your mentor. Some of the most popular mentors may or may not respond. Dr. Zayan is a really popular mentor, but he has a lot of approaches from students. So sometimes he is not able to respond to a mentoring request. So the lecture schedule is solid through October 22nd. I have not finalized things beyond that, but the rest of the course beyond October 22nd will be something similar to what's there on the schedule. Probably won't be identical, but it will be similar to what's there. Ishita Mogi and Emily Kameni are the teaching assistants, and they will gradually appear. You'll see Ishita a week from today on the 8th, and Emily, you'll see only if her conflicting class gets canceled on a particular day, then she'll magically appear here. But otherwise, she is not likely to come because but she did most of the preparation of the E-class. So the course format is 80-minute class periods, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Each of you will take on a special project of your own with guidance by the faculty and present the results of that special project in the latter portion of the course. You can see lots of other examples of this. I can send you exemplar papers and exemplar presentations, but you can kind of figure it out yourself. You can go into my YouTube channel and look at the student presentations that have gotten the most views. Now, luckily for me, the ones with the most views also got reasonably high grades. Be a terrible world, eh? Like the most viewed student patient presentations were the worst ones. But as far as I can tell, the most viewed ones are the best ones. And Vanessa Rogers, who's now a practicing physician, you can see her presentation from 2013. I think that has more views than anyone else's. And it was really a sort of life-changing thing for her. She was quite a shy person before that presentation began. And so it's kind of interesting to think about it from that point of view too. Some students are very experienced giving presentations. Others, their presentation in this course is really the first time they've done something like that. So the course emphasizes the idea of the accessible future, concepts of the future that are easily understood by an informed general public, follow rules of common sense, and are of practical value. We're not trying to teach you things that when you go to parties and stuff, when you're talking about them, no one will understand you. We're trying to teach you stuff that makes sense and people can grasp what you're talking about, right? That's the aim of the course. So taking the course on the road between semesters. So for some students, this course becomes life-changing and sort of they decide to do this for the rest of their lives. For other people, it's just kind of another course. But for people who want something related to the course all the time, came up with the idea of the future and all that jazz, which is putting important subjects, but ones that are somewhat unpopular as things to listen to a lecture about, like AI safety and regenerative medicine, putting those subjects in poetry and music and entertaining people in an evening and tricking them into learning science while they're having fun. So anyway, that's another aspect of the course. We also have international peer review, or we get famous people on the outside to like critique our lectures and stuff. And a lot of the changes we've made since the initial focus groups. I posted little videos from those focus groups from 2011 on our YouTube channel recently, just because I thought it might be interesting to see what those original students thought the course should be like. And I think we've followed those ideas pretty well. Okay. So the students will be evaluated on their presentation on the chosen project, paper on that project, midterm exam, class participation. So about half the time, I decide not to differentiate among students in the class participation. If, you know, they all participate reasonably well, it doesn't seem fair to go in and nitpick and say, well, this one talked a little bit more and was slightly cooler than the other. That just seems totally lame, right? So anyway, if you are reasonably responsive, either on Zoom or on Slack or on both, and if I'm satisfied with the overall degree of class participation, I think I might give you all a 9.5 out of 10 for that part of the course. And that way you wouldn't have to worry every time you say something or write something that like your grade is going up or down or whatever on the as a direct consequence of whatever you're saying or writing. So, okay. And so you pick a final paper topic, mentor, inform me of that by October 29th. The paper is due November 26th, which is currently the first day of the student presentations. We've set aside 3 days for that. But what we actually do depends upon what you want us to do and whether some of the students want to give their presentations early or whether you all want to put it to the end. And also if you can stay later, like how many we could do per day. We have made those sessions longer sometimes, and so we could do up to like 4 per day. The fatigue factor, though, like it hits me after a while. If we do like 4 or 5 or 6 students in a day, those last students, I'm not quite as alert as I was for the first student, right? So it is best to not have everybody on the same long day. You should indicate the source of image, and your papers get 5 points a day deducted for late work if you turn in the paper late. Yeah, and it can't be similar to any paper you've ever done for any other course, because this course is not similar to any other course you've ever taken. We talk mainly about speculative things, right? Things that don't exist yet, but may exist in the future. Every other course you've taken, I know it sounds boring to say it, but it's all about stuff that already exists, right? So this is a bit different. And so your paper and your presentation here has to have that feeling of like exponential change, Moore's law, you know, accelerating change, existential risk, machine replacement of human labor, medical ethics of the future, stuff that are very unlikely to have found their way into previous papers that you've done. Okay, if you go into Reddit, 99% of what you read about this course on Reddit is very positive. A lot of students find this course by seeing all the cool things that are said about it on Reddit. There is one comment, however, that I don't think is from a student. It's like from a friend of a student. but it says that there's a student who got a 90 who got a B plus, and that hasn't ever happened. So we tend to sort of, we accept clustering and other things as ways to raise people's grades. I can't recall an occasion where their letter grade ended up being disproportionately low. So that one comment on Reddit is not correct, but all the other positive things there, those things are probably correct or putatively correct. Okay, the technological singularity, you'll each be able to describe this in your own way, but this is a first run at it. And I think that it stands the potential of, like, when you go to parties in the future, you could be the most interesting person there, right? Because as the party goes on, you start talking about the stuff from this course in a way that people can understand, and it's really cool. So the technological singularity occurs. Artificial intelligences surpass human beings as the smartest, most capable life forms on Earth. Technological development is taken over by the machines who can think, act, and communicate so quickly that normal humans cannot even comprehend what's going on. So the machines then enter into a runaway reaction of self-improvement cycles, with each new generation of AIs appearing faster and faster. From this point onwards, technological advancement is explosive under control of the machines and thus cannot be accurately predicted. Hence the term singularity. So in physics, like if you go toward an event horizon close to a black hole, you cannot predict what's going to happen there. And so that's where that singularity analogy comes from. You can be excused for not knowing anything about the singularity before February 2011 because it was kind of hidden. But in February 2011, two things happened. The singularity was on the cover of Time magazine, and the artificial intelligence Watson beat the top human contenders on Jeopardy. And so that was a really exciting moment. So these are pictures of the focus groups, and you can go in and listen to these people actually deliberating about how this course should be run, but a lot of things about it come directly from their suggestions. They thought that there would be students who take the course once and then help with the course and continue to do projects related to the course, and like the rest of their career, maybe taken over by themes from the course. And there are other high-performing students for whom this is just another course, and then they're on to something else. That we should admit members of the general public here, that students do not, or people do not have to be registered in the course in order to listen to what we're doing. So it is open to the general public in that sense, and was quite interesting. We did two focus groups, undergraduate and graduate. The undergraduate students just wanted to talk about grades, everything about grades. And the graduate students had all these big, lofty, big ideas, you know, about changing the world with this course and so on. But anyway, both of those things are important, and the way it's ended up, this is a graduate course taken mostly by undergraduates. And so if you're an undergraduate, you have to be interviewed. If you're a graduate student, you just go into Baird Tracks and sign up. And sometimes what happens, I don't think it's happening this year, is because the undergraduates have to be like brave and courageous and outgoing and charismatic in order to want to be interviewed. They can way outshine the graduate students, and the undergraduate and the graduate students come together in the first class, and the graduate students are so intimidated by the undergraduate students that they never come back. But I don't think that's going to happen this time, because I think we seem to have very cool graduate students too, which is nice. So anyway, so you will find that there are incredibly large number of pictures from this course. And you may wonder, what's the deal with me? How would I ever have time to take like 138,000 pictures and put them on Facebook? And of course, I didn't take them. The camcorder has a software program that automatically seeks good still images and creates them from the video feed. So that's where almost all of those pictures came from. This is one example. If you imagine trying to take a picture like that, it's very hard to pose like that, but it's a kind of instantaneous moment that the software can capture. It'd be very hard for a human photographer to capture. So anyway, that's Osmer Zayan, who is teaching you AI. The room we originally had the course in was very uncomfortable. The air handling was louder than any of the speakers, and the lighting was lousy, and the air conditioning was lousy, and everything. But people still enjoyed it, which was very, very encouraging. But the other thing that was characteristic of that first semester when we started in the fall of 2011 is that I always had the smartest comments, which is very discouraging for me. You know, it's like I was constantly talking after everybody's presentation and so on. But in 2012, the next year, the students started to say more interesting things than I'd been saying before, and that sort of continued. So it's not just a formal presentation that is important in this course. I'm also looking for insights that you will give in your comments, because that's always been an important part of the course. All right. So Aisha Harian, I won't go into great detail, but it's really amazing what happened. She gave her final presentation. It went on YouTube. And 3 days later, this very famous tech guy from New York City called her up and offered her a high-level position in a new startup. And she left almost immediately for New York City, and that like changed her whole life. And yeah, so I'm not guaranteeing that will happen to any of you, but occasionally dramatic things like that happen. Jonathan White, you will encounter his original presentation from 2011, and you may wonder why it starts so abruptly, like almost an accidental start. And that is because I was aware that we were like all going to jail if one of the first YouTube videos from this course contains a copyright song at the very beginning that we had no right to be disseminating. And so that's what he did. He played the Future Song by Jonathan Colton at the beginning of his presentation. So I, in fear of going to jail for posting such a thing, stripped that off. And what you see is then the part of the presentation after that. Later on, he was kind of frustrated not being able to use that music. And in his TEDx talk, which you are responsible for, he actually sings that song himself. So that's a whole different copyright deal, right? So he sings it himself, and so you can hear the song there. And for the exam, you are responsible for the second part of this TEDx talk, even if you don't get to meet Dr. White in the flesh in the course or by Zoom. So currently, I'm not clear whether he is going to be teaching you directly, but you are responsible for this. You're also responsible for what's on this slide from Rich Sutton, Rich Sutton is one of the most famous Edmontonians. And so he is a major AI figure internationally. And so there was this AI safety meeting in January 2015. He was the only person from the U of A and the only person siding with the machines. All these other famous people and journalists and so on said that when AIs get too smart, you lock them in the basement, you don't allow them to communicate, you totally interfere with their rights as sentient beings. And he said, no, that's not correct. We should accept them, include them in our circle of empathy, share power with them. The AIs will not be under our control. They will compete and cooperate with us just like other people, except with greater diversity and asymmetries. We need to set up mechanisms, social, legal, political, cultural, to ensure that this works out well. Inevitably, conventional humans will become less important. Step 1, lose your sense of entitlement. Step 2, include AIs in your circle of empathy. So you need to know this. You don't necessarily need to agree with it, but you need to know it. And it's something you'd be very proud of at the U of A, that he was like, there were, I think, 81 people there, and he was the only one arguing for not enslaving machines. Everybody else wanted to enslave sentient AI, except for Rich Sutton. So you're also responsible for that. What? Sorry? Okay, so course specifics. So I talked about the future and all that jazz, and you can find the previous lectures. So we always sort of have more people who could be teaching in the course than are actually teaching that term. So you may encounter somebody whose previous lecture you really like, who may teach in a future term but is not teaching this term. And you could use that person for a mentor for your project if you want to. So you're not just limited to the people teaching this term. So the main subjects are the technological singularity, existential risk, artificial intelligence, genomics, and nanotech, and ways to optimize positive outcome for humanity in the co-evolution of humans and machines, the influence of these considerations on medicine of the future. You'll meet prominent people internationally. David Pierce, for instance, started transhumanism. So, you know, he's teaching you directly, and he loves directly interacting with students. So you'll get to know him fairly well, and you'll have the opportunity to kind of look him in the eye through Zoom and ask for his best ideas. And there'll be other people like that as well. Very important intellectual figures in technology and science that you will meet through this course. The problem of audience heterogeneity, I don't think it really is much of a problem. This is a very general course. I know the word medicine is in the course, but really there are only 5 presentations where we use medical terms, and even in those, you don't have to understand the medical terms in order to understand the presentation. So we try to keep this suitable for everybody. We've had substantial numbers of students from business, arts, nursing, many different, practically all areas of human endeavor faculties of this university represent have taken this course successfully. If you have special needs or are you having difficulty with subject matter in the course, please contact me and I can help you. There are other things that that you could do. You could plan social events, social distance, safe social events, and so these things are probably a little bit limited in the current environment. But there's also the possibility of, after this course, working with me and others on things related to the course. You may be aware of the green screen videos that we do, and Simon Wu is the person who creates that green screen technology, and Yoshida and Emily are the TAs for the course. Now, Marcus Hutter, I talked to you about David Pierce, who loves interaction with you guys. Marcus Hutter one time interacted with a group of students like you and wanted me to promise him he'd never have to do it again. So he's the only international figure we've had who really didn't seem to enjoy interaction with the students. But I kind of am proud to have him as a part of the course, because when you talk to anybody working in AI, they'll all tell you, yeah, no, he's not one of us. You know, he sort of marches by the beat of a different drummer and so on. But he seems to have insight into the things that other AI researchers don't. For instance, what is the singularity going to sound like, right? So he says, when it occurs, it's going to sound like white noise. If you're not going through it and a group of people are going through it, what you'll see that as is white noise. And so next time, we're going to take you to the depths of despair and then bring you back up to the heights of excitement. So like the first half, we're going to go through his PowerPoint. I brightened it up a little. He sent me a PowerPoint. Not only is very depressing, but also has really dark colors. That's a killer. And Jonathan Schaefer, the former Dean of Science, looked at that PowerPoint and thought that is the most difficult PowerPoint he's ever seen. And it's not that you can't understand what each slide is saying. You just can't understand the logic of how Marcus Hutter got there. But it's kind of good as a mental challenge also. So we're going to do that for about half of the next class period. And then when you're just totally depressed and demoralized, I got to bring you back up and talk about, Future Day and all that kind of exciting, fluffy, positive stuff. So you won't be left in the depths. So how are we doing disseminating ideas about the singularity? The Big Bang Theory, which I think has exceeded like 100 million viewers, talks about the same subjects, but in a humorous way, right? So anyway, we've got a long way to go. Our videos go up to about 6,000 views. So there's a long way between the number of people viewing our videos and the number of people watching Big Bang Theory. There are lots of other ways to think about this, but you could help with this. So you may know, or you may have heard, that I like surprises. One of the things that one of the early students did in 2012, he looked at this slide where I'm talking about the 7 million viewers of the NOVA program on PBS. And he called up the people who books people for NOVA and asked them if they would book me or what it would take to, book Dr. Solez on the program. So yeah, you don't have to surprise me, but if you do, that would be sort of fun, because I do sort of like the stimulation of something unfamiliar, initially unfamiliar. Okay, so Marcus Hutter, we'll talk more about this next time, feels the challenge of friendly versus unfriendly AI is probably exaggerated, but the more serious challenge is that we will be ignored. Not that AI won't like us, but they won't think about us. They won't care about us. So, and he created a model of general AI, and this model, as I said, outside the singularity looking in, it will be like white noise. Inside the singularity, if everything else speeds up at the same rate, you may not notice anything. It may seem like normal life to you. But even if initially our biological brains count for something in our mental processes, very soon, as the processes of the machine implant progresses, it will vastly outstrip our biological brains. So our biological brains become insignificant regardless of the friendliness of the AI. So that's sort of an interesting challenge to think about. So we could be stuck in a dysphoric eternal youth. I don't know whether you find youth dysphoric, but it can sometimes be a caricature of what it's like to be young, extreme risk-taking because you have nothing to lose. You can back yourself up from backups if something bad happens. Insignificance, lack of identity. Why wait to create backups when we have the processing power to run several lives at once? Now, you'll find me talking about this a lot. And if you come to my office, you'll find cardboard cutouts of me and so on. And the students who work with me are also getting cardboard cutouts. So they have cardboard cutouts of both genders soon. And so you can think of FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. Right now, you think that's just something that's a part of life. You know, there's no alternative to that. But there could be a world where there are multiple instances of you, and if there's several simultaneous events where you want to experience all those events, you can do that. And virtual reality is better than real, shareable with friends, and the price of valuable things comes down to practically zero. That's sort of the utopia side of possible future outcomes. But there's also the opposite side that we should avoid, right? The apocalypse. So one of the things we'll be talking about in this course is how to gently push things towards utopia and away from apocalypse. Okay. So we're trying to stimulate the general public to think about these things, and this course is a beginning attempt to achieve that. So in 2012, Singularity University, where I took the 9-day executive course in 2010, they started buying up things, and eventually they controlled most things with the name Singularity in them. They do not control this course, so we're still kind of independent. And the other thing that's interesting is Foxconn. Probably every single one of you are carrying something in your pocket now that workers in the Foxconn factory in China created. They create things for Apple and Samsung and many other tech companies, and they decided to replace 1 million workers with 1 million robots. And they didn't really do it completely, but that's still a potential thing. So then when you think about medicine, you can imagine a world much worse than the world of today, where we have eliminated all common diseases, but the only diseases left are bioterrorism diseases targeting specific groups of humans. And, that would be much worse than where we are today in terms of the medical situation. So we need to be engaged in ensuring a positive outcome for humanity. The future is ours to shape. Need to get busy doing that. So 2045 is only 25 years from now. And Kurzweil is now talking about the singularity occurring 10 years earlier. It's 2035, which is only 15 years from now. So all these speculative things we're talking about, the point in 9 years where machines will be as smart as individual humans, the point in 15 to 25 years where machines will be as smart as the whole aggregate human race and take over the future gender of the world, and you can only figure out what's going on if you collaborate or cooperate with them in some way. Both of these things are definitely within your lifetime, probably even within my lifetime. So they are directly relevant to you. Social responsibility of medicine is an important focus of the course. Rudolf Virchow, when he was 27 years of age, in 1848, almost all the sayings that he's known for were created in that year, wrote, "It's the curse of humanity that it learns to tolerate even the most horrible situations by habituation. Physicians are the natural attorneys of the poor, and the social problems should be largely solved by them." So one kind of amusing, or maybe not amusing, depending upon your point of view, event from the past is we always dreamed of teaching this content directly to the first-year medical school class. And then we got to do that. Oh boy, our dreams are coming true. And so Jonathan White said this thing that was meant as kind of a jest, but talking about sentient AI in the future, he looks at the class and says, "You guys will be out of a job." And the medical students got so mad. That was not the message they wanted to hear. And that's not what I believe, because if you think about this medicine writ large stuff that I talk about, that is something that is a much larger task than what physicians have today. In other words, fixing the ills of society that would mean that most people would lead healthy lives because poverty is gone and all that kind of thing. This is a much larger task, as is human enhancement. And there's no end for the human wish to be enhanced, right? We're not just talking about physical enhancement, moral, spiritual, you name it. And so I think physicians will always be employed. There'll be lots to do, just that their lives will be a little bit different. It won't be all, prescribing medicines for individual diseases. But the doctors of today, day after day, frequently have a question at the end of the day of whether they've really helped somebody. And I think in the future, probably your physician lives will be more satisfying. You'll be more certain that you really have helped somebody today. You won't so often have that question. Speaking of questions, so this is my class, the Singularity University Executive course. You can notice that I look very different from the rest of those people. It's the only person from the academic world. So the rest of them are like from government and tech startups and that sort of thing. And so I kind of stick out like a sore thumb there, as I often do in many things I do in life. And but it's turned out very well for me. But it's kind of, I began arguing that there needed to be new cross-disciplinary structures in universities to help prepare the students for the future. The more I talked about that, looking for someone else to do it, I realized the person I'm looking for is me. You know, I'm the logical person to create such a course. So that's how the course came to be created, after a brief period of time of me trying to find somebody else to take on this course. So the other people teaching in this area, there are 4 other courses like this, but they're all taught by professional keynote speakers. And you may sense that I am not a professional keynote speaker. Professional keynote speakers earn all their income from speaking fees. Can be 40 to 60,000 per talk. I mean, it's really something, but you don't have to be academically credible. You don't have to always give the same message. You have to just give a good show, whereas I have to be academically credible, and so on. So our situation's a little bit different than the situation in those other courses taught by professional keynote speakers. So you can imagine a post-scarcity world where the main medical challenge is human enhancement and the reversal of aging. It's not just stopping aging, but actually reversing it. That is possible. 1,000 years young, we need to consider the possibility and what medicine would be like in such a singularity utopia. Moore's law, you'll encounter many, many times, so you need to understand what this exponential curve means. But so right now, we are at this 2020 point, and we're heading toward 2035, 2045, when the intelligence of machines surpasses all human brains combined. Okay, so Moore's law in medicine is a bit muted. Medicine has a lot of regulation and stuff that slows things down. So it applies, but it's as if you have sort of a governor or break on Moore's law in medicine. Because of regulatory oversight, different financial reward system, and security considerations. So there's an idea I came up with in 2004 of the mega macroscope, talking about really big things, you know, like really big ideas. Because I spend a lot of my days looking at really small things, right? Looking through a microscope. And IBM just discovered this idea of the mega macroscope in 2017, and so kind of cool how they are promoting that. But hopefully both ideas will stimulate you looking at very small things and trying to figure out what's going on there, but also thinking about very big concepts and our place in the cosmos, right? That's also important. So I welcome your suggestions on how to capture the imagination of the public, to start everybody talking about these matters would be most welcome. And we need to promote organized thinking about the future in universities and beyond, and think of ways to increase the reach from this one course to the world at large. There should be courses like this everywhere. And actually, ironically, COVID makes that more possible, right? I mean, there was a natural resistance to what we're doing here. And part of that resistance just sort of melted away. Like in two areas of personal endeavor of mine, digital pathology. It looked like there was going to be immense resistance to that, but as soon as the pandemic hit, people who had vowed never to go close to digital pathology just gave in and totally accepted it. And similarly with my idea of tissue engineering pathology, like how you would examine stem cell generated organs to decide if they represent net benefit for a patient, that is also much more readily accepted now than it was before the pandemic. So you can go into Google Trends and you'll notice some of my papers. You may first ask whether using Google Trends data is rigorous enough that you can publish papers on it. Well, the answer is yes, surprisingly. So you can find lots of published papers that primarily use Google Trends. And the curve of the trend during the pandemic has been very interesting for many things. Some of it's quite sad, like you may have seen my video about Billie Eilish's song, My Future. What she's saying there is that for the next short while, she's going to become best friends of herself and go into self, discovery and not worry too much about the external pressure. She has to find someone. She says, I've already found somebody and it's me, right? So what does Google Trends say about that? Well, totally. If you look at the number of searches on relationships, that kind of search has plummeted. I mean, people used to search about relationships before COVID, but there's much less of that now. Also, searches on science have gone down. Science in general, fewer people interested in science. But like if you look at one of my areas of interest, kidney disease, because kidney disease is a part of the COVID infection, there's been this immense roller coaster, right? So at the beginning of the pandemic, there was huge interest in kidney disease as people realized more and more how pivotal this is in COVID infection. Then everybody got scared about just surviving. They weren't going to do any searches, right? So then there's this huge trough. And then they realized how truly interesting the kidney part of COVID is. It affects all four histologic compartments of the kidney and so on. And so then it came back up. So there's this tremendous roller coaster in Google Trends data that is really quite inspiring to look at, because it suggests that at this point in time we're at, you can convince other human beings of things and get them working on stuff that in the previous era you never could have succeeded at, because they've been through this roller coaster. They're kind of ready for anything now, So anyway, it's kind of exciting. So have I done anything with that? Yes. Well, I have an editorial coming out in Kidney International, and now I'm going to tell you the title of the editorial. You got to think, oh, this is going to be so totally boring because I don't care about kidneys and so on. Anyway, listen to this title though: Re-innovating Nephrology, a call for action. Who wouldn't be excited by that title? I think I never could have gotten away with publishing a paper with such an exciting short title before, but it's just an example of the kinds of things that are possible in the world of today, the way it's been changed by the pandemic influence. Okay, so I'm going to let's see, how do I stop sharing here? Yeah, stop share. Okay. So how did we do? Very, very good. Okay, so that was like 58 minutes. Do you have any questions, comments, thoughts in general?
How
Is
can
this what
we?
you thought the course would be like? Better, worse? How
It's
is
good,
it?
in my
How,
opinion. For me, it's good. I do have one question.
yeah.
Is there a list of the mentors that we could approach on the eClass platform?
No, not on eClass. You will quickly recognize that I've been like in love with YouTube for a long time and in love with eClass for a very short time. So I don't know very much about eClass, and the TAs mainly manage what's there, but you can go into the YouTube channel and look at the videos there and get an idea, who has taught, which of them are teaching subjects that you personally find of interest. And so, the Peter Lougheed Leadership College, right? It's been an interesting connection between the Leadership College and this course. Sometimes we have a bunch of students from the Leadership College taking the course and other students from the Leadership College teaching in the course. So anyway, you can find these gifted people your own age who've packed an incredible amount of life into 20 some odd years, and like Shauna Panya is maybe the first example that you meet in the course. You'll meet her on the 10th, which is just 9 days from now, right? So anyway, yeah. So I don't think you'll find it difficult to think of who the candidates could be. They wouldn't necessarily still be in Edmonton. They could be somewhere else, and you could still use them as a mentor. Yeah. So that's the deal. Other questions?
Are there any books that, because I saw that there's a list of PDF that is already uploaded on eClass.
Yeah, so those are two books. Neither one of them is required reading. I think depending upon what you're interested in, they may or may not be valuable. The one about the post-pandemic world is obviously interesting if you're going to write about that or speak about that. And the one about the state of the future is published by the Millennium Project people. And it's the latest one, even though it's 2017, they didn't do one in 2018, 2019, 2020. And it focuses on the country Pakistan the theme in the past had been every time there was a new one of these state of the futures, they would pick a country, kind of analyze where it is now, what its future looks like, all that kind of thing. It's very good for scenarios, thinking, well, how do you decide about scenarios, and what should the wild cards be, right? The wild cards are the features that are unlikely, but if they occur, will sort of change everything, Trying to figure out how you come up with plausible future scenarios, and then how you figure out what the wild cards should be. So let me tell you my experience with a reading list for this course. Initially, I thought it was sort of a requirement that you're putting out a course, you should have a reading list. So I had a reading list that what I eventually discovered is no one ever pursued it. The only one who read any of this stuff was me. So it didn't seem it's kind of like something else that you've probably encountered. When you're planning big things about your future, right? You go to see somebody for advice. You're not intending for them to tell you what to do. You're hoping they will reinforce what you've already decided, right? That's the way all such encounters sort of work, you know. I just wondered what you thought I should do, but you're secretly hoping that this thing you've already decided. So this is sort of like that people think that it would be just great for me to give them a whole bunch of resources that they're currently unaware of, right? That they don't know anything about, start reading a whole bunch of new stuff. But then when they start to do that, but I'm not interested in this. I was interested in the areas that I already know the resources in and so on. And I'm not interested in these other extraneous areas where Dr. Solez has provided me these links. Yeah, so that was my way of figuring out why it was then that people didn't seem to be reading from the reading list, the optional reading list, when I provided it to them. So if you want to try that again, I can send it to one of you, but I think there are sort of more obvious ways to find things to read, right? It's really not hard once you pick an area that you want to pursue, and the areas you can pursue in this course are so diverse. I mean, if you start thinking, well, it has to be medical, well, it's not medical like you think medical. Medicine writ large includes like poverty and pestilence and all sorts of things, you know, clean water and stuff, right? So I mean, that's what I'm talking about. And so with such a broad definition of medicine, then practically anything that you are really, really interested in has a medical side, medical technology side, and it's not hard to find the resources. I can help you if you wish, but yeah. Anyway, plus I think one problem with the reading list that I put together is it reflected my own personal journey, right? How I got here, you know? So it includes like PDFs of a lot of relatively old stuff. And, you know, you spend a few hours reading old PDFs and it suddenly occurs to you, I could have spent the same amount of time reading 2020 PDFs. I mean, that would be much more accurate and sort of on target and, you know, reflective of the thinking of today. So Dr. Solez has tricked me into reading PDFs from 2013, 2014. You know, I wasted hours and hours where if I'd stuck to more recent PDFs, when I look at myself in the mirror, I would respect myself more, you know, because now I'm filled with wisdom. Yeah. So anyway, that's sort of what my feeling is about the reading list. But it still exists. If one of you wishes, one or more wish to receive a reading list, I'd be happy to send it to you with somewhat ancient PDFs. Yeah, so any thoughts about, so what we usually talk about the first class is whether we are going to do any entertainment or party related stuff. Now in COVID, of course, that's not going to be like it really was before, but for instance, Nikolai Smith, the street performer who went to law school and has performed for us many times with a bullwhip, I'm sure he has something that he can do virtually, right? I would imagine there's virtual bullwhip. So I mean, all these things that used to be face-to-face, we could think up ways to do them virtually. Some of you have already asked about the future and all that jazz. So I've asked Mallory Chipman how she feels about that. She's just starting a graduate program in music. It's virtual, so it's taking time, but she's still here in Edmonton. So we could conceivably do some combined music, poetry, and science and medicine events, but it's somewhat up to her whether she wants to do that during this term. Yeah, anyway, does that partially answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Who else has questions? So let me go into this thing about your time and so on. I think particularly in the pandemic period, there might be an advantage to giving you all the same grade for class participation, because let's say one of you is here or less or something, you know, obviously the metric is that you produce fewer words on Zoom and fewer words on Slack than any of the other students, right? But there could be a good reason for that, right? I mean, your cat could have died, you know, all sorts of things that I don't know about, but this is a very turbulent world. And I sort of feel that since I've already had experienced some terms of giving everybody the same grade for that, that would be good if things ended up that way. And if you weren't constantly thinking every time you wrote or said something that, you know, that your grade was going up and down depending upon how I reacted to it. I think that's a sort of, you know, malignant force. It's better if we can all just talk to each other without feeling that, you know, you're being constantly graded, right? So anyway, that would be my preference. The only downside there is if we have really fantastic presentations and then complete silence from the students and no questions on Slack and so on, I'm gonna have to get tough with you guys, right? And force you to be evocative in a way that you apparently are not spontaneously feeling inclined to be evocative. But yeah, I sort of sense that won't happen, and there's enough of you now. There's kind of a peer pressure of people who have said that they want this group of students to be, quotes, discussion-y. In other words, doing a lot of discussing and bringing different points of view here and so on. I think that would be good. So I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm just saying in the history of the course, there have been some terms where it is clear that there was kind of this conspiracy of speech writing. Like all the students would come to class with these little mini speeches prepared, you know, and wait for their moment and again give the speech into the microphone and stuff like that. But there's also been the opposite, perfectly good students who just figured, well, I'm not inclined to say anything. If the presentation is really good, I'll smile a lot, but I don't think that I necessarily feel like asking any questions or making any comments. And that could be sort of soul destroying for me sometimes, because it doesn't make for very good video where get to the end of the presentation, students just sort of looking at each other and nobody's saying anything. So anyway, I sort of get the feeling from this experience today that that's not very likely to happen, that there's enough spontaneity amongst you that the conversation will happen, and you can go into Slack and also, you know, discuss things there, and you can look at, you know, you get years and years and years of previous discussion of many of the same topics from other students in Slack, so you can look back at that and see what some of their critical questions were. Like, one of it had, I mean, there have obviously been terms when it was in the winter, and so there was Future Day on March 1st, and the students had zero enthusiasm for Future Day. They didn't quite know what to do about it because I seemed so enthusiastic. On the other hand, they did know that I'm one of the few human beings on the entire planet that celebrates Future Day. So we can look at kind of, you know, amusing student discussions about what are we going to do about Dr. Solez's affection for Future Day. Oh my goodness, yeah. But the answer is, you know, you don't have to do extra stuff, but you could, and you might find it fun. And there might be something I haven't even started to, you know, describe that would work really well as something no group of students has ever done before in the course, but you know, that we could take on something brand new. You know, we could create mask with you know, some sort of branding on it related to course. I don't know. I think that's a worst idea. But anyway,
Dr.
Yeah.
Solez, quick comment. I think I think this is a really small enough group that I think having like more discussions would be really awesome. I personally really like discussions. I'm some of the most like some of my most favorite classes I've taken were smaller classes, so that's something I'm really looking forward to. I think it'll be a little difficult over Zoom just because normally when you're in person, you're able to kind of build that banter and get to know each other. So maybe it might be a good idea to just early on in the semester, maybe not today because we don't have enough time to do maybe introductions so we know each other and we're more comfortable with each other. But just thought that I think might be helpful. The other thing also, I think you mentioned earlier about the midterm being either take home or like a normal midterm. I think I would prefer a take home exam. I think it would be better in an online sort of a format. So it'd probably be easier for you as well. But I think that would probably be helpful.
Sure. Yeah. No. I think that's fine. What I would propose, the third lecture that I'm giving on the 8th, so a week from today, is shorter than the others. It just naturally is. So, and by then we'll have more experience with kind of what the course has been like and so on. So that would be a good day to have each of you tell a little bit about yourself and your thoughts about the course, and you know how you would like to see it running this year. And that way, when Shauna begins to teach on the 10th, we can also tell her that we've done that. She also is going to ask, she will call on each of you and ask you why you're taking the course. And if you've already done that on the 8th, then you'll be really good doing it on the 10th and give really smooth answers and so on. So, yeah. So that would be my proposal. I don't think we as you say, we don't really have time to do the personal introduction today. And next time is kind of aberrant because during part of the teaching session, you're frustrated because, you know, these are, as Jonathan Schaefer says, like the most difficult slides you've ever seen, but kind of intriguing because you can certainly understand what they say, but you have no idea how Marcus Hutter got there, you know? And like the whole thing about the Library of Babel. So I'll just give you this to think about for 2 days. So he's describing a library that contains all books, not just all normal books, but all wrongly printed books and all misprinted books and all completely blank books and everything, all books. And he's saying that that library has zero information because of the fact that it's not searchable and you can't tell where the good stuff is, and it's too large to create an index for and that sort of thing. And he got so frustrated with me that Marcus, the students don't really understand this. And he tried to briefly explain it to me, and then it was apparent to him that I also didn't understand it, and so on. So the problem with introducing ourselves in a kind of relaxed, fun way next time is you'll still be holding resentment about some of Marcus's slides and all that kind of thing. Happy that you learned about these unique ideas you never heard about before, but on the other hand, frustrated that you don't quite see how he got there. And then the future day stuff may be a bit too positive for you. You're kind of into, maybe marketing kind of positive things a little bit, but this is a bit much. And yeah, so whereas the third lecture is much more of a normal kind of time when we can introduce ourselves properly and have fun and prepare for the part of the course where Shauna is teaching. And Shauna is really then preparing you for that very interesting ethics section where we talk about how are we ever going to reach a Star Trek world, and if we're really going to do what Elon Musk says and genetically engineer radio-resistant humans, what happens during the rebellious teenage years of these radio-resistant humans when they don't want to go to Mars? I understand I was bred specifically to go to Mars, but mommy, daddy, I don't want to. So don't they have the same right of self-determination as non-radiation resistant humans, and a whole bunch of other questions? So Shauna's presentation and stuff that I'm teaching is sort of preparing you for that. So I think this is possibly the strongest start to the course that we've ever had. You can go back and see, we usually start with AI. You have a couple of lectures from me, and then Osmer tells you about AI, and then we gradually get into more Star Trek-y stuff. This time we're starting with space and Star Trek and, personal resilience and all that kind of thing. All the things that Shauna stands for. Celebrity's hard to define, but one thing you might ask is Shauna a celebrity? She denies it. Am I? I deny it. I don't know. But certain aspects of that are certainly there. And you will enjoy the stimulus of meeting somebody your own age who's done so many different things and has such a high level of personal accomplishment and bravery. She's a martial artist and has gone undersea and up into space and all these sorts of things, and never seems to ask the question, but what happens if something goes wrong? She does ask it, but she doesn't talk very much about that. Yeah. So anyway, okay. Any other burning questions then today?
I just had one comment on kind of the introductions. I saw that you had a Slack set up for us, and maybe if we don't necessarily have time in the next lecture or the lecture after to kind of do those introductions, maybe we could do it on Slack quickly, just like a little message to everyone just to introduce each other, because I think it is nice to have like an introduction, and since it is such a small course. But I'm really excited for the course, and I think everybody else is probably feeling the same way.
Yeah, well, one thing I would say is let's not worry too much about whether people are registered students or not. Like in my view, right, now. You know, Devansh Bat, who is not a registered student, is right in the center, right? Like, I think you guys would like to know about him, and, you know, Rebecca, who, and so on. So I think that probably everybody should take the time to kind of explain who they are. And it's commonly been the case that some of the people who show up who are not registered students have the most interesting stuff to say, you know. So anyway, that is also something that I think you can savor and enjoy. So there are 9 registered students in the course, and there are, yes, let's see. So there are, you know, 11 of us here. So we've got those 9 students, then 2 others, Devansh and Rebecca and me. So that's how and next week we'll have Ishita here, and probably there are various people from around the world who have indicated some interest in joining us. Some of them, it would truly be the middle of the night for them to be here. So you may have noticed one guy in India. I'm suggesting we do that in the morning, but I want to get to closer to that time and figure out how many of you would actually be free at some time in the morning, because I don't want him to be up at like 2 a.m. or something. Is it okay if we create a group chat on Discord for students registered? Yeah, sure. No, I don't mind trying Discord. I don't have any experience with it. Slack is something, and so any of you can go into Slack. Yeah, no, we can use both. I don't mind that. Certainly. No, I mean, yeah, I think to just answer your question, I think of people who want to start introducing themselves on Slack today. That would be great. And if we don't get everybody represented there, then like there may be people who would just much rather do it on Zoom. You know, this is as close as we come to face to face. They may rather do it here. And then by the 8th, we can see where we are and what, you know, remaining questions there are, and what kind of interaction we would like to be having. So yeah, I've already noticed that you're a pretty interesting group of people. So haven't had any encounters yet where oh no, this person is so boring. That doesn't usually happen here anyway. So anyway, yeah. So okay. So we're already 7 minutes over, so maybe we can end things here. And so go into Slack, do some interaction there, and I'll see you on Thursday back for the second lecture, and Marcus Hutter followed by Future Day and things like that. Any other birding questions or things that need to be resolved right away before we separate again? No, you all look pretty comfortable, you know. It's not like anybody's twitching or, yeah, you all look like you're enjoying hanging out here. So that's good. Okay, I'll see you on Thursday then. Yeah.
There's it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.